Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I like that intro. I was wondering what that was all about. Barry with the flowers and everything. What is that about? It's actually sad when we find out what it is, but nevertheless, we'll get to that in a second. He goes up against Hartley, who's stealing, and I'm like, wait, the last time we saw Hartley, he was actually a good guy. Well, he was a bad guy, but then he became a good guy because Barry changed stuff in the past. But then it's like, wait, what? And it's like, and Camilla and Chester are on comms because literally everyone else is kind of off doing other stuff. And I love that whole situation of like, wait, you don't remember what you did to Hartley? That's pretty messed up, bro. And then Barry's like, crisis, right, more changes. So, and it's like, oh, he doesn't just need his gauntlets. He can basically use he can shoot the energy from his mouth now too. So it's like, okay. And then Barry starts running because he's trying to go down a particular pathway. But then it's like, oh wait, there's a train here, and he phases through the train before it hits him. And it's like, once again, so many changes, and he's getting Gideon as a means of like calculating all the changes because of Crisis. Apparently there are trillions of changes. There are probably like very like minute little ones, and there are bigger ones. Obviously the biggest one being literally all the Earth collapsing into one. But the fact of the matter is now Chester's walking in and it's like, wait, Barry Allen's the Flash? And it's just like, ugh. And then Camilla's like, yeah, I kind of already knew that. And it's just like, oh, it makes so much sense. The same voice and everything. And he goes, and also that jawline is very distinct. I'm like, I love that that's a superhero thing. Because like that's all, and like a lot of people when the test footage, when Matt Reeves released the test footage of Pattinson, that's mostly what I've heard from most people. It's like, man, that Pattinson's got that jawline. So it's just like, it's that superhero thing. But I love that it kind of gets referenced. And Barry's just kind of like doesn't know how to take that, compliment wise. So I thought that was interesting. But obviously, like, Chester's kind of like, oh, let me help you out. And Barry's like, no, don't touch it. He's kind of a little aggressive with Chester. But Camilla's like, no, I understand. Because Barry explained, basically, this whole Crisis thing is overwhelming. Because for him, like, the flowers and everything, he was trying to find his parents' grave. And it's like, it's not in the same spot. I was like, that's heartbreaking. Just because for him, it's just like, for him, he's trying to hold on to anything just because, like, everything has changed. Like, nothing has ever changed this drastically for Barry. Like, yes, he's changed time before. Yes, Flashpoint happened. It had ramifications, but, there were bigger ones. But, like, he's never dealt with a change on such a massive scale. Like, and so it's that thing of just kind of holding on. And, and Barry ends up kind of confronting that this episode because he's basically trying to hold on to the past of things that were different. And it's just, because Camilla's like, I totally get it. Crisis changed a lot. And, you're trying to figure things out. So, but Barry's using the device and then he gets, knocked out by it. And it's like, okay, what the hell just happened to him? And so there's this whole thing of like, he's in a cell and it's like, Caitlin's there, and then he sees Wells, but he's immediately like Eobard. So it's like I was like, what happened there? Because I completely forgot. Because I know like the title of this episode, I forgot what it is, but I knew it had Grodd in the title, and I was like, because I forgot about it, and I was like, all right, this is supposed to have Grodd. Well, how does this have to? Oh, and then immediately after I was starting to think that, it immediately explains. This is literally a mindscape. It would make sense why these two particular people would be here because Barry, Caitlin, and Eobard are literally three most influential people on Grodd. Obviously, Barry being an enemy, Caitlin once being a friend who betrayed him, and Eobard basically made him who he is. So it's that whole situation. So, but because at first Barry's like, am I in the past or something? It's like, oh yeah, use your signs. And he's like, what? And he looks to see the reflection. I was like, oh, so I thought he was actually Grodd, but it was to a certain extent because he's trying to make Barry see it's like, this is what it's like to be locked up in a cage, powerless. I've been in this coma since you guys put me in here. And I've been in this state for like a year. This is all on you guys did this to me. And so the fact of the matter is Barry's like, well, do you think you don't deserve it? Like all the bad stuff that you've done. But then Grodd ends up talking about the fact is that he recognized like because of the coma he was away from his mind and his powers, so he went back to being primitive, and so he ended up remembering, like he looked back on what he did. It took him a long time until it took him like that full year before he could start like thinking on a level like he kind of was before, but he reflects on his mistakes. It's like, I made a lot of terrible mistakes. I did do some bad. And he's like telling Barry like, oh, I changed, but Barry didn't want to listen in a moment because he lets Barry out of the cage because Barry's like, oh, you're not even going to talk to me yourself. So Grodd gets rid of Eobard and Caitlyn and comes out as himself. But the moment Barry gets out of the cage, Barry like super speed punches him, and it's like there's no way you're going to change. Tries to leave, and lo and behold, who's blocking away Salavar, not getting out that way, and he comes back. Now Grodd is Joe, which is interesting. That's got to be a little sucky because it's like literally certain beings always manifest themselves as people you care about. It's like obviously the Speed Force has a nasty habit of doing that anytime it wanted to talk to you, so that's a whole complicated thing. But for Barry, it's like he didn't want to believe that Grodd could change because Grodd was like, the fact of the matter is, now we learn a big thing because of Crisis. Gorilla City is on its Earth now because it was originally on Earth 2. Now it's on this Earth, and now Grodd wants to be free so that he could go back to be with his people. Like, he's like, I don't want to be that bad guy anymore. Like, I want to be around my people, kind of want a second chance and everything. And Barry's like, you've let go of your past. It's because Barry, like I said earlier, like Barry's learning, like, I need to let go because I'm so caught up on trying to keep everything the same as it was prior to Crisis. Now post-Crisis, I'm still trying to hold on to that I'm like, I need to just accept that things aren't the same. Like, especially because he doesn't really get into it, but even look at the team dynamic. The team is different. Like, who are the only people there? Camilla and Chester. Because everyone else is kind of dealing with their own things. Frost was away. Iris is off doing her own thing. So is, Cisco and Ralph. So it's that complicated thing of like, things are changing, especially because now like his relationship with Iris is changing. Granted, that's a little bit of a complicated situation, but like so much is changing that he's trying to like keep everything grounded. I mean, let's not forget like all that happened during Crisis 2, what he lost. Like he lost a friend, a mentor, Oliver. So it's just, there's a lot compounding upon itself. Plus, like, literally, the world you knew is completely different. It's like, yeah, it's dope that, like, hey, like, we're all on the same Earth. Me, Black Lightning, Supergirl. Like, you guys are on the same Earth as me now. How dope is that? But at the same time, it's like, that comes with other aspects, too, because you can't also forget, like, the literal multitude of Earths collapsing into this one, too. So that's a whole thing. But I think also another element to this too is when it comes to Barry's track history, trusting villains has never always worked out for him. So you can understand why he's even less likely to believe Grodd has changed, because when he gives a lot of his villains a chance to change, they don't. But obviously a comparison that kind of gets brought up later on is Snart. Snart is like one of the few examples of that. I mean, you can like obviously Mick, Heatwave is another case of that, but it doesn't happen that often. Those are two examples out of many of that kind of happening. So, but another interesting thing we ended up finding out, apparently Grodd remembers post-crisis. I'm not pre-crisis. Interestingly enough, I think it's kind of basically because of the state his mind was in at the time of the Earth's collapsing. He remembers everything, so like he gets the feeling like something changed out there. It's kind of similar to how Jennifer was in that state in between like the different worlds when she met her Earth 1 and Earth 2 counterpart. She was kind of in that state of like in between worlds at the time her Earth got destroyed. So like I think it's kind of a similar thing. So when he popped back, he doesn't like the new timeline of like Crisis, like post-crisis, like everything is like, oh, this is the way things have always been. It didn't affect him because of the state his mind was in. So it's kind of basically his mind was separated from his body. So I was like, that's really interesting. But so at the same time this is all happening, Chester, Camilla, as well as Frost are trying to help, bring Barry out of this because of the tweaks that Chester made. It led to this whole situation of like, because of that, him tweaking the device, it led to Barry ending up in Grodd's mindscape. So Chester kind of blames himself. But I love that he is fanboying a little bit because he's like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing. I'm like, this is the craziest thing ever. And Frost kind of looks at me and he's like, oh my God, it's terrible. It's such an awful situation. Then later on when he finds out, wait, this is Gorilla Grodd. Oh my God, he's like my favorite villain. I love that. But the fact of the matter is, Chester kind of walks away because he's like, I made a mistake, which Frost is like, dude, if we literally held everyone accountable for like the fact is we've all literally put Barry's life in danger at one point in time, even the janitor for overwaxing the floor. But the fact of the matter is, after we made our mistakes, we come together and we figure out a way to save him. And for Chester, he came like a dude was telling him, basically because people like us, I interpreted it as them saying like, because he's black, it's like we don't get a second chance in the world where people are willing to kind of cut you out immediately, which Frost is like, I can't, understand what you've been through in your life, but the fact of the matter is, everyone deserves a second chance, and it means a lot coming from her because she got her second chance, so that's why she's a, adamant believer in those, so. But, it's kind of bouncing back and forth, like, Barry, and because Barry was like, I can't defeat Salivar because I'm trying to fight him the same way I did 3 years ago, so we got to do something a little different. They're teaming up this time. I was like, oh wow, Grodd and Barry fighting together. That's gonna be pretty dope. Did not realize at first. I was like seeing Barry touch him. I was like, yo, is Barry sharing his speed with Grodd? It's like, no, they literally pulled their minds together. Which I even love really quickly that Frost was like, yeah, we've kind of been down this situation before or behind. Like the fact is, people in the Mindscape and stuff like that. It's like it's happened more often. I mean, it happened with DeVoe, it happened with Ramsey. It kind of makes sense, but nevertheless, I love the fact is that like they combine. I was like, what? And Grodd gets that little like almost like painted on lightning bolt on his chest. I was like, dude, and he's got Barry's speed. I'm like, the brawn of Grodd with the Flash's speed. This is unparalleled. But it's interesting hearing Barry kind of give Grodd this speech, doing like, run, Grodd, run. And, they were kind of losing a little bit, but Grodd phased, zipped around Salivar, and then like, because I know that technically has a punch. Is it called like the round the world punch or something like that? I mean, it's when Barry ends up running around the world and punches. Because I think his super in Injustice 1, I believe that, if I remember correctly, that was he runs around the world and punches you. I think that's his super, if I remember correctly. So, like, I think that's still kind of it, just on a much smaller scale. When he runs around, he's building up speed. So, like, obviously his punch has even more. Well, because he's done it at least once. It was, like, early on in the show he did it, where, like, he was going up against a guy who was his bully, but, the guy was a metahuman now. It was an actor who played Drake in iZombie. Well, would later on play Drake in iZombie. But the fact of the matter, you get what I'm trying to say. I guess I always just think of that as kind of like a more smaller scaled version of that whole situation. But regardless, they end up winning. At the same time, Chester's trying to use this device to kind of help out Barry. He comes back in because they've got to basically split Barry and Grodd's mind before they leave. Because if they come out as one, basically those minds are going to be in one body until it basically breaks down and ends up killing both of them. But luckily, everything ends up working out. So that was pretty awesome. And, it's like, oh my God, you did, Barry. He's like, yeah, because of the team. And it's like, yeah, like I said, it's so interesting because it's like they're bringing in like fresh new blood for the team. Like I said, it's because like so much has changed because like, OG Team Flash and new people who've come along the way. Team Flash has kind of been this established unit of kind of what it is for so long that so much is kind of changing around it. It's so interesting because Cisco left Wells to kind of take care of all this, but he's kind of dealing with his own stuff at the same time. So it's just, Nash, but it's still interesting that Nash hasn't really taken charge of looking after everything like that. So, but regardless, I thought that was fascinating. Barry, explaining to Chester, like, explaining everything that's kind of going on, and Chester's like, Camilla told me about your whole situation with your parents. So he's like, so I kind of hacked into every like cemetery place and ended up tracking down your parents. So Barry appreciated it. It's like, oh, Hartley showed up. It's like, can you be on comms for me? Chester's like, oh my God, yes. And like Barry dashes, like, oh my God, that's never going to get old. So it's like, old blood and new blood, like, once again for Barry, it's like I gotta probably eventually catch up on some of the changes because of Crisis, but for now I can't be holding on. I can't expect this world to kind of hold on and stand still for me. It's moving forward with the changes that happen. I've kind of got to go with the punches too. They also bring up the fact is that obviously Grodd goes to Gorilla City. Lila is tracking him, but Frost is like, let's give him an actual honest chance, because once again, she's in the process, of all about second chances, so she wants to, obviously give Grodd another chance as well, so give him an actual chance. So it's going to be interesting to see, another one of your villains is now an ally, so what that potentially could mean, opening up for the future of like, Grodd and Flash team ups in the future. It's kind of interesting to think about. But yeah, that's an interesting side of things. Kind of along those same lines, we'll talk about the whole Iris situation. Iris goes to her dad about like, oh yeah, like you have any stuff on Joseph Carver? He's like, yeah, I do, but I can't share it. She's like, oh, funny. Wait, you're serious? He's like, yeah. I mean, before like the mirror gun thing, yeah, that was a Flash thing, but now it's like this is now like a CCPD thing, so I can't really give you any information. But then she's getting aggressive about it. I was like, this is my thing, and I'm like, why is she? And then I start being like, why is it that this Iris is so adamant about going after this thing? I was thinking that because like maybe everything that separates, like maybe everything that drove the original Iris, she's kind of like an improved copy. Not necessarily improved, but maybe it's a situation of like maybe everything that's inside of her, like every drive that Iris has, like she kind of doesn't have the inhibitions of like kind of being slowed down by being like maybe like kind of the consequences. It's just kind of like I'm gonna go full throttle type of situation. So I was wondering if it was supposed to be that. Then at the same time we had the whole thing with like, all right, let's use your device, Eva, to kind of try and get out of here. But Eva's like, I don't know, but Iris is like, no, I trust you. And, because Eva's like, oh my God, you're so brave and everything. So it's like, maybe we could be brave together. But then it seemed like Eva was reluctant to use advice. And it's like, why is that? And Iris is like, what are you hiding from me? And then she activates the device and uses it on the mirror. The moment Eva pokes her hands out, they start burning, and she's like, that's why I don't do it. Because she explained, I was like, well, why did you say anything in the beginning? She's like, because so many people doubted her work just because it was like theoretical, it was something that hadn't really been seen before. So for her, it's like people needed to see my work before it really became, they couldn't just accept the thoughts of it. But Iris is like, no, like if you had told me, I would have believed you. I trust you. So it's like her hands are all messed up and everything. But then lo and behold, I was like, you're still hiding something, aren't you? I'm like, what is it? And then like she goes to the mirror and she communicates with the other Iris, and she ends up Hillinger. And I'm like, of course, it makes sense. Because once again, it's something I brought up too. I was like, why is it that there's not another version of Eva out there if there's one of Iris? That's what didn't make any sense to me. Plus, Iris got pulled in by something, or rather someone. I think it is interesting that she just happens to not run into Eva until after the clone Iris is just up and about, and then the next time it's like, all of a sudden, like Eva just pops up, and it's like, now it kind of makes a little more sense. So it's like, and the thing is, now it also explains why Iris is so into this whole Joseph situation. Eva's putting her up to, because I was like, that's the full extent of her powers. Like, she's not showcasing everything she can do. She literally, because at first I was wondering, like, did she subconsciously do it? It's like, no, she on purposely made, because I was thinking maybe it was a combination of the mirror plus Eva, or maybe the mirror was kind of its own thing. I wasn't sure, like, 100%, but now it's like, no. Eva made that copy of Iris, and it's like, why? Because she needed someone to take down Joseph. That's why it's so, like, that fake Iris, why she's so intent on taking down Joseph. Because I think Eva wants it, because I think Joseph knows where Eva is, but rather than, like, probably at first it's like, oh, I'll help you out and everything, but then eventually he probably got to the point where he's like, you know what, I'm not going to. Maybe she's even pissed because it's like, he moved on, how dare he move on from me type of situation. I think there has to be more to it. I think Joseph knows, because that room was closed off like that, I think he knows. I mean, to be fair, while you're in that world, you can't see anything, but maybe she thinks, like, maybe he's the reason why she's trapped in there, because her hands burning thing, I think that's a byproduct. I think that's a byproduct of she herself can't leave. That's why she made that fake Iris to do. Whatever the case may be, she's like, this whole thing is a part of her plan, so she's trying to delay Iris as much as possible, because Iris can leave, but she can't. And so whatever it is, like, I think she's trying to take down Joseph so that she could find a means of actually getting out. But I think, the whole solitude thing, it's the whole thing of like, is she as mentally as messed up as she claims to be, or was that a front, or is it a thing of like she went insane, but then it's like after a while a sanity's just kind of not worth it anymore, so you go back to being some form of sanity found in your insanity. So I'm wondering, is it that type of situation? I'm interested to dive into that, like what the hell Eva's whole thing is, like what it has to be something. Like I said, it's just because maybe Joseph moved on without her, or maybe he, like I said, he left her in a sense. He knew that she was there, but he gave up on trying to find a way to save her. Something deeper than that, I don't know. Or it could be that entire story she told Iris about like the particle accelerator going off and her going through the mirror. Maybe it is a thing of like she could actually come out first, but maybe Joseph made it so that she was trapped in there. Maybe not. Maybe it's because he took all her life's work and kind of took advantage of it and made it his own, and that's what pissed her off. Or, like many different possibilities. We'll have to wait and see. But another interesting aspect to this is the fact is, Nash is getting Allegra to help him with this device he's making. And then all of a sudden he sees Sherlock, and I was like, so it's not just HR you're seeing. It's not just Wells that you're seeing. Then I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense. So it must mean, because at first I was like, none of them could have been HR, because I was like, HR is dead. So I'm like, when all the multiverses collapsed, when all the other Earths collapsed into this one, I was like, does that mean all the Wells that were alive too collapsed into him? Is it because he is the one Wells? I mean, there were other versions of everyone else out there in the multiverse. Obviously, we know there's an Earth 2 Barry at the very least that was still alive and kicking, and Earth 2 versions of Joe and Iris. So I'm like, why? That's why I'm wondering, why would that be the case? But maybe there's more to that. Then Allegra's trying to help out Wells and Nash, and she's like, why do you keep talking to me like you know me? And she's like, never mind. Also, like, the boss lady told me about Crisis, so I know about the differences and stuff like that. But nevertheless, because it's like, right, she knew about Crisis beforehand, but she probably found out about like the ins and outs of Crisis after the fact. But nevertheless, maybe she does, maybe I would assume she does, but who knows. But the fact of the matter is, after all of this, like, the device didn't work, and Allegra ended up getting flown back, and she finds a picture of like her and Wells, and it's like her and Nash, and it's like, what's this about? It's like, wait, so for her, it's like, I thought you actually believed in me, but actually whenever you look at me, you just see someone else, and it's like, that's kind of messed up. It is kind of sad, just because it's like, oh, like, you're being friendly to me, you're helping me and all this because you see someone else when you see me. You don't even see me, and that is kind of messed up, using someone else's doppelganger like that. And I love him going to Frost about it. And she's like, honestly, just be honest, like, be upfront, lessons I learned from my life coach, Ralph. And then he was like, wait, Ralph is your life coach? Which is like, you say that. Ralph is actually really, really good at being a life coach. You wouldn't think it, but didn't he? He's good. He's really good at what he does. But Nash later on tries to go to Allegra and try to like muster up the courage to tell her the truth. And then Sherlock grabs him and says, he is coming. And then he starts blurring and his eyes turn red. So I'm like, Eobard, which we haven't seen Eobard since the season 5 finale. Yeah, the season 5 finale. So it's like, okay, so, because I think I remember reading something somewhere. I could be mistaken. Obviously, I'm not well versed in comic books, but I think Eobard plays a role in the original, the comic book run of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Obviously, like, the TV show is going to do its own adaptation. Like with any crossover and just anything in general, it's going to do its own thing. But I'm wondering what this post-Crisis Eobard thing is going to be about. Does he remember everything? Like they're making a point of that, of he is coming. And it's like, we haven't seen, like I said, we haven't seen Eobard since then. So it's like, like the negative Speed Force or something, was he inside of it at the time? Because we know that the Speed Force is how Barry was able to kind of get everyone to the dawn of time, to get to the anti-universe, that whole situation. So it's like, it makes sense. So like the Speed Force can be a means to kind of get around that whole situation, because even with things being the way it was, Barry was still able to travel through the Speed Force to kind of, do all that during Crisis. So it's like, maybe Eobard did the kind of opposite with the negative Speed Force. Maybe, I don't know. So it's like, what is that? Once again, why is it presenting itself like that to Nash? I guess because that's the only Wells. Like, maybe because, well, Eobard looks like a Wells, so maybe some of that translates over. I don't know why him out of anyone. Why wouldn't Barry be getting these messages? But why him? But at first I was thinking, like, not unless it's Eobard messing with Wells, but it's like, no, it doesn't seem like that's, with Nash, but it's like, what that whole thing means, I'm interested, especially if that's, because like I said, it straight up seems like it's signifying Eobard's return, and what that necessarily means in the grand scheme of things is definitely going to be really interesting to see what that all ends up being. We'll just have to wait to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.